Morning, folks. Welcome to this week's edition of the Daryl and Boo Show on Monday, November 2nd. How's it going, Boo?
Good, thanks. Recovering from Halloween there. I don't know if you had many trick-or-treaters at your place.
We don't. It's I think so. In years past, we will get literally a handful. We're in a neighborhood where there's lots of schools and kind of a quiet neighborhood in terms of traffic for walking around. So you think would be ideal for trick-or-treaters, but we're at the very top of a fairly steep hill, and we've kind of come to the conclusion that parents and their kids are just a little bit too lazy and don't want to walk up, because we actually see them. If we go outside, you can see them kind of in the neighborhood down below our hill, but they never make their way up to our house very often. This year, obviously with COVID, I think there was just less kids out in general. It sure seemed that way. So we didn't have any at all. I assume it's a little different in your neighborhood. Still lots of kids out in the street.
Yeah, there was a good amount of kids. I would say not as many, and definitely in my street in particular, there wasn't as many houses that had their lights on. But I guess just everywhere in our subdivision besides our street had a bunch of lights on as well. But so for our street, hold on for a sec. I'll do a giveaway. So
all right.
Anybody who sends any comment can have all of this candy, because I do not want it in here.
Certified to be free of any sort of COVID-related issues.
I got to get rid of that stuff, so I will ship it anywhere that anybody wants this free on me.
There you go.
Yeah. No, the kids had fun, though. People were definitely getting creative with handing out candy. So we did a table in front of our house and just had candy packages individually packaged up in little Ziploc snack bags. There was one neighbor apparently who had an RC car with a bowl mounted on top of it. And so you could come up to the house and then he would drive his RC car out with candy in the bowl. A lot of people had like chutes set up. Actually, fan favorite John Callalang, he posted a picture. He had a chute set up and was sending down beer or candy through the chute.
That's awesome.
Yeah, seems like
he's in the beer capital of North America.
Yeah. What else was there? I think that was mainly it. But I mean, it was a great Halloween in that the weather was awesome. Like in the last few years, it's been hit or miss for whether or not it rains. It's getting into fall here in BC, and so the rain comes. But it was such a great night. So the kids had fun. People weren't having to walk all over lawns and stuff because there was a little bit less traffic, at least. So in that sense, it was good, and the kids still had fun.
Nice.
Yeah. What'd you get up to this weekend?
Just got out mainly and enjoyed. We were out, went for a run, and yesterday, I mean, the weather was just absolutely stunning here. I've kind of said many times before, October is my favorite month in Vancouver, and we're gonna get this. Typically, those sunny, cool days that are pretty rare for Vancouver, where you don't have overcast clouds and all the trees and foliage changing color. So, anyways, I love October in Vancouver. We have friends that live out in Coquitlam, and they just invited us to do I don't know if you call it a hike, but just more of a brisk walk out in a park in Port Coquitlam. I'll probably butcher the name, Minnecaca or something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
I hadn't heard of the park before, but it's huge. Black bears out there. We didn't see any, but just beautiful. We probably walked for a few hours through the woods, and then we went to a brewery that I had not been to before in Port Coquitlam. Again, the name is escaping me. It starts with a P, but it was a great little spot.
There's North Paw, or there's Tin Roof.
Yeah, it wasn't one of those ones. This is right in the kind of town of Port Coquitlam. I'll look it up later on and give it a plug. They've actually got their own smoker there, so most of the little craft breweries you can kind of only get snacks, but this one actually had its own smoker and did smoked meats, which were really good too. So yeah, it was a nice little end to our hike for the day, and yeah, beautiful day in Vancouver.
Nice.
Yeah. So I think I'm kind of interested to bring on our next guest from F5 Labs, David Warburton.
There he is.
Hey guys.
David right there. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Morning, everyone.
Yeah, I was saying, interested. I've not had the pleasure of meeting you before, chatting with you. I know Boo has. We've had some of your colleagues from the F5 Labs team join our show before, and it's always, I think, very, very interesting, because I'll let you talk a little bit about F5 Labs and your role, but it's completely distinct from F5 proper in what you do, and your role is I guess kind of has very little to do with F5 products themselves. But anyways, before I ramble on anymore, maybe you can talk a little bit about your role at F5 Labs and just the F5 Labs in general.
Yeah, sure. I mean, to be honest, Daryl, what you said about kind of being somewhat separate to F5 is one of the things that drew me to the Labs team to begin with. I mean, I was as an FC with the Labs, with the F5 sales team for maybe 5-6 years before, and kind of moving and getting more and more kind of interested in security, just generally, having gone back to uni and done loads of fairly heavy kind of crypto-related stuff that just, for whatever reason, kind of just sparked an interest in my brain. The idea of really being able to delve into research and writing and, I guess, educating was a real big kind of draw for me. So you're right. I mean, these days, sadly, my kind of F5 knowledge is lacking a little bit. It's still somewhat in date, but I'm certainly not quite as up to date as I'd like to be. Yeah. But I kind of take that as a good thing, because we don't only kind of research and write about the kind of topics that F5 products or Shape or Nginx can solve. We just write about what's going on in the kind of security space. Whether we've got a solution for it or not. Hopefully we do. Hopefully the kind of the things dovetail, but that's not always the case. So yeah, so I mean, some of your audience may have kind of heard it from my colleague before, but essentially what we do is we don't quite perform threat intelligence. I don't say, a lot of people, when they hear threat intelligence, they think of things like dynamic IP feeds and dynamic lists that can be injected directly into a firewall or a WAF or some other kind of security control. We, I think, would probably call ourselves more security intelligence, I suppose. A lot of the kind of articles, reports that we write they really speak to a very wide audience. We have some fairly high level, very kind of information security management related topics that are kind of aimed, we have a section on the site called CISO to CISO, but really it's for anyone that's in any kind of security management position, or anyone that's just got a general interest in security, right through to really super level topics that are performed, are written with our security malware researchers that do reverse engineering and, bot tracking it and so on. So there's a real wide kind of gamut in terms of the kind of research and writing that we do on the site.
Yeah, like I said, we're lucky enough to have Sander, one of your colleagues, join us on the show, and he's actually been up to Vancouver and Victoria to speak at a couple of security conferences also. So great guy and very interesting just to kind of learn about his background and kind of how he got into F5 Labs. So you were an SC at F5 before you made the transition. I obviously detect an accent from somewhere in the UK. I'm not an expert. Were you actually?
I kind of hope not. I've moved around a bit. I was born in France. I grew up in Bristol in the southwest, and I live somewhat in the kind of Midlands area, and there's some pretty strong accents around the UK, and I've somewhat managed to avoid most of them. I wouldn't quite say I speak the Queen's English, but I like to think it's fairly neutral in terms of accents. But occasionally you do notice the odd little twang come in from the region that I'm living in at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. And that's where you are now. So I apologize. I have no idea.
There's a big city called Birmingham, which I'm sort of near. I'm just north of that. And these days, I would say, had we spoken a year ago, it would have been a happy coincidence being in the middle of the country, very good to kind of commute or work with customers I had all over the UK and in terms, and even getting abroad. For the region I cover, specifically EMEA, so I would go and speak at customer events and conferences all over Europe, Middle East, and so on. But of course, these days it makes no difference. I'm sat, pretty much in the same four walls every single day, so it doesn't really make much difference.
Yeah, is it been pretty in? I guess Europe obviously has had a tough go of it relative to where Boo and I are in Canada, although it's even ramping up here, unfortunately. But have you been fairly isolated throughout the whole process?
Somewhat. We're actually just getting into second lockdown.
Yeah.
Starting, I think, this Wednesday evening, Thursday. We're hoping only 4 weeks, but we've just kind of seen an uptick in cases again recently. So we're hoping a kind of relatively short lockdown will help knock things on the head a little bit, just kind of get us plateaued maybe in time for the kind of holiday season. So that's the hope.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're probably headed in that direction also. We're just every day it seems to be a slight uptick. And even in smaller rural parts of Canada that have been almost unaffected have started to see cases kind of increase. So yeah, there's really no escaping it. So it's interesting to talk to people in other parts of the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, it hasn't drastically impacted the kind of day-to-day stuff that we do. I mean, generally, we're a fairly small team within labs. We all work remotely. So we always had a huge number of kind of Zoom calls anyway. So for me, the number of Zoom calls has only gone up fractionally. It's not quite as bad as some people.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, I mean, the one thing that has kind of changed is most of us that work in labs are fairly evenly split between the kind of research writing side of the job versus the actual evangelism side, so the going out speaking. So of course that is the big side that's changed, whereas I would be out at various conferences presenting. Now of course it's all virtual conferences and kind of pre-recorded presentations that get kind of rebroadcast for these virtual events.
Yeah.
That's you bring up something interesting, actually. So from a research perspective, it allows for more time for that. But then, in the summer, F5 went through a CVE, and a number of other large vendors who I won't call out, but went through also very big CVEs over the past few months as well. So it seems like on the other side of the coin, the attackers are also finding themselves with a lot of time on their hands to do their own research.
Yeah, I won't steal my own thunder for some other conversations that we're going to have. But we definitely saw, I think on the whole, it's really interesting looking at all the different data sets that I've managed to get my hands on, from internal F5 data sets to UK, American, Australian kind of, national data protection authorities. There all seem to be this kind of immediate kind of downward trend right at the start of most countries' various kind of lockdowns. So around the kind of February, March time, there's quite a significant dip in terms of general attack traffic, and then a huge spike up where it seems like genuinely even attackers are kind of almost adjusting to changing lifestyles and maybe even family situations. So there's this kind of period of transition of kind of coping and adjusting to new normal. But then when they are at home, of course, they've got new targets, people that are, using various remote conferencing for the first time, a huge uptick in VPN connectivities, phishing has kind of gone through the roof. So after that initial kind of downward trend, it then skyrockets back up.
Yeah, we've been having conversations with financial institutions as well, and some of our colleagues within our district as well, have found that during COVID, governments would do some sort of COVID relief fund and hand out money to folks, and there's been fraud around that. That's
Right.
been an uptick, and also just fraudulent activity within a financial institution altogether. So definitely people with the time in their hands and maybe have lost their job or whatever, and are looking for other things to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's been too much of that in the UK that I've been aware of. I mean, that's the thing as well, is I do try. So with the kind of team that we've got in labs, we do somewhat kind of focus on our regions. I mean, a lot of security incidents are fairly generic and global when they happen. But we do try and kind of keep more of an eye on the kind of local regions. So from a UK perspective, I've not heard of anything huge, but I know it's certainly a big problem in the US.
And are you in particular working on anything specific now, Dave, that you can speak about? Or
Sure.
I know that when Sander came out, it was the interesting a couple of times again, just presented on the 2019 application protection report, I believe it was called, and just some of the findings. So I assume that exercise is going on for 2020 also, and have you been involved in that, or something different? How does that work?
We do tend to have, again, we're a fairly small team. That's the interesting thing compared to some very large, companies that focus a lot more efforts maybe on kind of threat intelligence or report writing. We're a fairly small team, so we will have one or two sort of lead authors per report. So that work does consume a lot of time, and that generally is almost like a continual year-long process. Sander, as you said, is the lead author on the application protection report series now. He is, I would say, pretty much always working on it, as well as kind of interspersing with other bits and pieces throughout the year. But it's almost a continuous kind of cycle of collecting data and analysing it and producing the next drafts and chapters of the report and what have you. And it's somewhat the same for me. I'm just coming up to almost publishing the new phishing and fraud report. That should be out in a few weeks' time. Another area of focus for me is on, I love to kind of geek out a little bit about crypto and ciphers and things like that. So the TLS telemetry report is now kind of my bag as well. So we're aware of publishing that yet, but again, collecting data is a year-long thing. And in fact, the last time I was on speaking with Boo, we had Katie, our intern, on because we just finished writing the Kryptonize tool, something that customers or anyone actually can go and download and use to scan their websites and get a report on their TLS health. But that's kind of plodding along. But the big one for me at the moment has been this phishing and fraud report that's almost complete.
Nice. I think, Boo, you've got Dave on later on this week, is it, to dive into that a little bit more deeply? Or
yeah, so our Thursday we'll have a live stream with David, and I've entitled it "Learn How Fishers Fish," so that should be a fun time. That'll be at 9 a.m., so a little bit earlier than we usually do live streams for any of the booze hours, but with David being 8 hours ahead, I thought it'd be a little bit kinder if we had it a little bit earlier than usual. Yeah, and maybe we can touch on too for Kryptonize. Has there been any recent updates to that? I know I guess our lead developer was Katie, who's gone back to school there. So I don't know if
I've cursed the day Katie went back, because you're now looking at the lead developer. But it does mean, of course, with everything else, that I'm not really doing loads on it. I mean, we're hoping still, being as it's open source, it's on GitHub, that anyone can contribute. And we have had some contributions over the months. In terms of recent additions, there's a few little things. We've got support for some new Linux platforms. Some of the dependencies we've got are fairly kind of entrenched, so it does mean porting it from one Linux flavor to another one is not as easy as it might kind of seem. So we've got support for some new distros. We've got a few new features added. One, because it's, again, one of the main reasons that we created the tool was from a slightly selfish point of view. We use it for our TLS telemetry reports. We use it to kind of scan the web at large. So one of the things I was really interested in figuring out for the next report is, it's one thing kind of reporting on who's using TLS 1.2 or 1.3 and what kind of certificates they're using, but what's driving the websites? If we see that 50%, 60% of websites that are using TLS 1.3, why is that? Is it a certain framework they're using? Is it a certain CDN or cloud provider? So one of the new features actually takes have you heard of Wapalizer at all? It's an extension actually you can get for certainly Chrome, and I think Firefox as well. Yeah, certainly Firefox. It's a very cool little extension where when you go to a website, the Wapalizer tool will tell you how the website's built, or will kind of give you a best guess. So it looks at headers, it looks at scripts and JavaScript code and all sorts of things. So it will say if it's using a certain version of Node.js or a certain content management system, if it's IIS or Apache, those kind of things. And that's open source GitHub code. So I've grabbed that, put that into the Kryptonize tool as well. So that now that we're starting to scan, perform a continual scanning month after month of all these sites, we're starting to build a picture of, how these various websites are being built, which just gives us kind of more kind of context to the data. Because I I'm a huge kind of believer in having proper kind of context for things. It's very easy to kind of perform scans, get some numbers and makes some pretty bold claims, but if you look at things a slightly different way, if you don't understand the context, it paints a completely different picture. So
yeah, interesting. So we always try to, I know Boo and you yourself are going to dig a little deeper into the fishing report and some of the work you've been doing there, but we're trying to also with our guests just learn a little about what they do in their personal life and what keeps you busy when you're not working on F5 Labs security stuff. Are you soccer fan, I assume? You always just assume
I'm not. No, it's literally the first question that most non-English people ask English people. And for most people, the answer is yes. For me, it's not really. I mean, I love the World Cup. I love international games. I'll watch those and get into them. But I'm actually not a huge kind of follower of soccer or football. Even most sports, you know, when I was younger, 15, 16, I mean, if I stood up, you'd understand why. But I was into basketball.
Okay.
I'm fairly tall. So it was, you know, it was an obvious kind of sport for me.
Sure.
But even then, even being a huge kind of basketball lover, I was never really hugely into watching games. So I love sport, but very rarely kind of watch them. But I kind of noticed Boo's guitar in the background. I remember Boo saying, are you playing that guitar yet?
Yeah, that's a funny subject.
You're gonna have to remove that guitar. You're gonna be embarrassed.
Well, I noticed a few guitars in the intro as well. I was thinking, oh, are they going to ask about it? I mean, so I do play, but I'm one of these frustrated guitar players. I don't practice anywhere near enough. So I probably know I know the intro for maybe 24 songs, but can't play any of them all the way through, which is really frustrating.
Ahead of where we are.
Yeah, it's been highs and lows, and definitely been going through a low season since our guitar lessons that were dawned upon us by my father-in-law. So going back to soccer, I'll just throw this out there that I think I asked you about it too, or I mentioned it before, but my father-in-law is a huge Liverpool FC fan, and so they just an update on that was that they won the Premier League quite handily. They had 3 losses all season, so they had an absolute record-breaking season. They actually clinched the title like weeks ahead of the end of the actual season, but pretty amazing time. So there's a football update for folks.
I'm just going to smile and nod. What has been odd actually is now that they've restarted the season with you know, the restriction on gatherings, watching, you know, because I do sort of see bits of games now and again, you know, but watching those games with empty stadiums and the fake kind of fan and crowd noises in the background they try and overlay, that's quite a fun use of technology, I think.
It is, yeah. They do the same for American football. I'm a big NFL fan. And yeah, it is odd that my team in Seattle Seahawks, where the F5 head office is, but it's known as the loudest stadium in, they actually measure these with every stadium, and it's known as the loudest stadium year after year. And which offers a distinct advantage to the Seahawks when other teams come, because they basically drown out the quarterback. So,
do you have the crowd to thank for that, or is it just the acoustics of the stadium that make it that loud?
You know what? It was it's both. So it's been, there's like a 10-year wait list to get seats, so it's always completely sold out, and very enthusiastic fans. There's a baseball team in Seattle, but there's a hockey team coming, but it's very much a football city. But you're right, they actually built the stadium with acoustics in mind. So yeah, it is a big part of it.
So for MLB, for baseball, they did have some fans, I guess. They're just spaced out.
Yeah, they just, because those stadiums are so huge and cavernous, they did allow fans in for baseball, but they were also playing in the bubble too. They were just playing in two stadiums where NFL has actually tried to, so far, has kept their own stadiums, which just makes it a little bit more challenging, I think.
So I'll bring up this one piece of news that I had popped up into my news feed here. Vancouver 2030 Olympics returns to City Council's agenda for economic recovery. Now, at this point, I can't imagine hosting the Olympics and having, you know, millions of people visit Vancouver at this point and having sporting events, but I guess it is many years away at this point. But it should be very interesting if that actually happens.
I've been talking to some friends that have got tickets for gigs and concerts that aren't till next October. So somewhat far away, but even next October still seems a little bit surreal at this point to think that potentially tens of thousands of people could be, shoulder to shoulder in a dark, sweaty kind of concert environment.
Yeah, it is. Now, I don't know. It is hard to even make a best guess. I mean, you assume there's going to be some sort of vaccine at some point next year, but yeah, you're right. Even next September, it's hard to plan for.
Yeah.
So you're a guitar player then, Dave. I know Sander is a very accomplished musician.
Yeah, and this is why I was worried, because you've had Sander on. You've had someone who not only is a very accomplished player, but an instructor as well, right? So he knows what he's doing. I enjoy playing, but I would not say that I'm accomplished in really any way at all, sadly.
Yeah.
Not yet, anyway.
It is amazing how many people we've actually had join our discussions who do play guitar at some level. It's just one of those instruments that tends to attract people, and some people are actually kind of got it built into their weekly routine, and others just kind of pick it up every couple of months.
I need to go back to playing electric. I started on electric, and I find it a bit more forgiving when it comes to making mistakes. A bit of distortion and volume goes a long way to cover up. Acoustic's brutal. You just hear every little mistake you make.
Yeah.
I need to get an amp or something.
Yeah.
Well, actually, one thing I found, I do have an electric guitar as well, and when I would practice that, it would be a little bit easier because you could just put headphones on, and wouldn't make as much noise. So, the kids would have been younger at that point, gone to bed earlier, larger efforts in not waking them up at that age, and so I could put headphones on and try to play electric guitar at that point. So.
Yeah. No, I made the transition almost for the same reason. I do love playing acoustic, but I've got a relatively new addition. Actually, it's just a very small practice amp. But one of the things I always struggled with is having a lack of effects pedals for electric. I had a couple, not huge, but of course now a lot of them have got. So you can plug your phone in with the amp, with the special app for the practice amp, and you can get all sorts of kind of crazy guitar sounds coming out of it. It's really cool.
Oh wow, amazing!
I had this. Let's see if I can find it here. The iRig. I don't know if that's the one that you.
It's not. It rings a bell. I've got a Laney.
Oh, okay.
I think it's a British-made one, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
So you get a little interface that you plug your guitar into, and then your let's see if it shows. You have to buy the pedals, which it's great. So you can buy all the effects and stuff, and they're all like $5 or $10 each. But it's all electronic, so you can just run it all through your.
I mean, it's crazy, be able to kind of tap a button on your phone and just have your guitar sound pretty much identical to some track that's got distortion or delay on it, and it's just you don't have to do anything. Someone's gone to the effort of programming the sound to make it sound like your favorite guitar from your favorite track, and it's awesome. It's really good fun.
Yeah.
It is amazing. Yeah, that's I'll say that's one thing I probably, of all the things that I miss with COVID going on, my wife and I try to get out at least once or twice a month on the weekend to local places that do live music, whether it's just a tiny little place or and most of that has just gone away. So really looking forward to that again when get the chance to kind of see people play live.
Yep.
Well, we are at the top of the hour, so thank you very much for joining, Dave, and especially, again, with the time difference. Appreciate you jumping on, and appreciate you joining Boo on Thursday. It's going to be a really interesting discussion around
I'm really looking forward to it, actually.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to diving into that one also.
Cool.
Okay, thanks, everyone. Enjoy your week, and we'll catch up with you all next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for checking this out today. If you're watching via YouTube right now, go ahead and click subscribe down below. Also click the bell for notifications. That way you will find out when we are dropping a new video or when we're going live. Also, there's darylandboo.com. If you head over to that, leave your name and email address, we will drop a weekly technical newsletter in your inbox every Monday. Also, this is available via podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify. Head over to one of those, hit subscribe, and you'll be able to listen to us in the car on your commute or during a walk or a run. Thank you very much, and we will see you next time.